the quiet corners of Crescent View Medical Center, where infants take their first breaths, one figure walked the sterile halls, seemingly dedicated to the care of the helpless. A nurse, always present, always poised. But for all the compassion expected of her, behind the soft uniforms, there was a presence that commanded an unsettling feeling. Nia Johnson. Her name was whispered in halls, in quiet conversations, but no one truly knew her. At least, not the way they should have. The trust given to her was absolute, the assumption that she was just another nurse, a professional, a healer. And yet, something was off. Her patients were the most vulnerable, newborns, fragile and full of promise. But something else followed them in their journey through the hospital doors. These babies, innocent and pure, found themselves under her care. Some survived, others did not. There was no obvious reason for their sudden decline, no underlying condition to explain it. The deaths were slow, lingering. A stillness filled the rooms. No one thought to ask why. Every step she took was calculated, every gesture controlled. Her eyes, those eyes, never gave anything away. They were cold, detached. And yet, when she stood over those tiny lives, there was something undeniably chilling in her gaze. It wasn't remorse they saw. It wasn't guilt. What they saw was power, the control of life and death. But was it truly the will of fate? Or was it something much darker? She was always there, in the right place at the right time. Too often, too consistently. It was as if the clockwork of life and death bent to her will. How far could someone go when their mind twisted beyond recognition? When the instinct for control took over everything? And when the people around them were too blinded by trust to see the truth? In the very heart of the hospital, in rooms where cries for help filled the air, one woman chose to listen to something else, something darker. And for the babies who lay under her watch, their cries were silent in the face of a predator. This isn't just about a nurse. It's about how far someone can fall when they choose to ignore the humanity they were once sworn to protect. This is a story of cold calculation, of a hidden agenda carried out in plain sight. And as the walls began to close in, the truth behind her actions became undeniable. Who was Nia Johnson really? And what drove her to cross the line between caregiver and killer? The hospital had no idea, but they would soon. Nia Johnson's story begins in the rough, unforgiving streets of Harlem, a neighborhood marked by poverty, violence, and the daily struggle to survive. From an early age, Nia was exposed to a world most would shy away from. She grew up surrounded by neglect, abuse, and a constant need to protect herself from a world that didn't seem to care. Her home, far from a sanctuary, became a battlefield. No one taught her how to trust, how to love, how to heal. Instead, she learned to survive. As a young girl, Nia experienced things that left permanent marks on her soul. The absence of a father, the constant instability of her home life, and the harsh reality of a world where kindness was often seen as weakness. The violence she witnessed shaped her. It began to twist her understanding of right and wrong, of care and cruelty. The emotions she should have felt, love, compassion, empathy, were buried beneath layers of anger, frustration, and isolation. And though she grew older, that darkness never left her. It festered quietly, waiting for a chance to surface. In her adulthood, Nia left Harlem, though the weight of her past remained with her. She found work at Crescent View Medical Center, a place where the fragility of life met the hope for healing. A place where she could escape her past and find a new identity. Here, in this sterile environment, she became a nurse, a role that demanded gentleness, patience, and care. She excelled. Her calm demeanor, her quiet professionalism, made her a model employee. The very traits that once kept her alive on the streets, calmness, control, the ability to blend in, now made her a trusted member of the hospital team. But beneath that polished exterior, something far more dangerous simmered. The very control that had kept her alive in a world that didn't care now took root in her work. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a predator, quietly observing the most vulnerable, waiting for the right moment to strike. The hospital, with its cries of pain and the constant push and pull of life and death, was the perfect stage for someone like Nia. Every action, every gesture was calculated. To others, she was just another caregiver, someone they trusted with their most precious possession, their children. But in her mind, she wasn't just caring for these babies. She was manipulating the very course of their lives, deciding who would live and who would die. For her, it wasn't about healing. It was about power. Power over life, over death, over the helplessness of those around her. In the quiet moments, when no one was watching, Nia would stand over the babies, feeling a surge of control, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she alone held their fate in her hands. Every breath they took, every heartbeat was her decision. Her calm, controlled demeanor was the mask that hid the rage beneath. She had learned to repress her emotions, to push down everything that made her human, but in that calm was something much darker. The more she controlled, the more she took from others, the more powerful she felt. And with each baby who died under her watch, the stronger her need grew. It wasn't enough to just care for them. No, she needed to hold their lives in her hands. She needed to be the one who decided who would survive. And as her reign continued, no one could see it. They couldn't see the cracks forming beneath her composed exterior. They didn't know that she had long crossed a line. Her victims were innocent, but in her mind, they were something else entirely. They were a means to an end. They were a testament to her control. She was the perfect blend of charm and cold calculation, someone who knew exactly when to strike and how to leave no trace. Her ability to manipulate the situation, to keep people at arm's length, to make them trust her, was her greatest strength. Nia knew that in order to keep her secret, she had to remain invisible. And for a long time, she did. Nia Johnson was not just a nurse. She was a product of her environment, a woman shaped by neglect, violence, and a need for control. Her professional success was the perfect cover for her hidden darkness. What she couldn't control in her past, she would now control with deadly precision. It begins like any other day at Crescent View Medical Center. The halls are filled with the soft hum of machines, the murmur of nurses and doctors going about their rounds. The steady rhythm of life continues without interruption. But beneath that surface, something is shifting. Something is changing. A newborn is placed under Nia Johnson's care. Just another life to tend to, another child to nurture in a place meant to heal. At first, there is nothing out of the ordinary. The baby is in critical condition. Fragile, its life hanging by a thread. The doctors are doing their best, trying to stabilize it. But Nia's presence seems almost constant. She's always there, watching, waiting, moving seamlessly through the ward, always close. Almost too close. Hours pass, and the baby's condition takes a sudden turn for the worse. The monitors flatline. Nurses rush in, but it's too late. The child is dead, and at first glance, there's nothing unusual about it. Newborns die, sometimes without warning, sometimes without explanation. In the medical world, it's a harsh reality, a life lost before it even truly began. But something about this death is different. Nia was there, always there. She had been by the baby's side every step of the way. The surveillance footage tells a chilling story. Footage that no one thought to question. A shot of Nia moving silently through the room, her face an emotionless mask. She doesn't flinch, doesn't pause. Her hands steady, her movements deliberate. There is no sign of panic, no sign of concern. Just calm, precise actions, almost as if she had already accepted the outcome. There is no rush, no urgency, just methodical care. The eerily calm expression on Nia's face as she works. The way she seems to know exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. She moves through the room as if she's seen this all before. She acts like she's in control. And that's when it hits. This wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't have been. In the aftermath, when the body is taken away, The hospital moves on. But Nia's satisfaction lingers in the quiet moments. A fleeting sense of triumph pulses beneath her skin. It's not the grief of a nurse losing a patient that she feels. It's something else entirely. It's a feeling of euphoria, a rush of power. She has taken another life. But it isn't about the baby. It's about what she's done, the control she had, the sense of accomplishment that swells within her chest. For Nia, this death isn't a tragedy. It's an achievement. And in the days that follow, as the death is chalked up to natural causes and no one questions the circumstances, that feeling only grows. Her actions have gone unnoticed, her presence unremarkable. She has blended in, slipped through the cracks without leaving a trace. And as long as she can keep her mask intact, no one will ever know the truth. But the truth is this: Nia Johnson has just crossed a line. She's tasted something darker, something dangerous, and now she craves it. This death was just the beginning. It won't be the last. The true danger of a serial killer lies not in their ability to commit murder, but in their ability to blend in, to appear normal, to be so convincing in their role that no one ever suspects them. Nia Johnson was a master at this. She wasn't just a nurse, she was a chameleon. Her ability to hide in plain sight, to make those around her trust her, is what made her so dangerous. The stark contrast between Nia's demeanor and the death of the baby becomes impossible to ignore. She walks away from the scene with the same cold expression, as though nothing has happened. But the truth is, something has shifted inside her. The first kill has opened a door, and there's no going back. As the days pass, something unsettling begins to take shape in the sterile, quiet corridors of Crescent View Medical Center. At first, the deaths are seen as unfortunate but inevitable, tragic moments in the fragile world of newborns. But as more and more babies die, the pattern slowly becomes undeniable. It's not the circumstances that are odd, but the subtle, chilling consistency that accompanies each loss. Each baby is vulnerable, too young to speak, too fragile to fight. Each parent is trusting, placing their newborns in the care of the hospital, believing they are safe. Yet, these babies are dying under Nia's watch. And Nia, she is always there. She's the nurse in charge when the babies take their final breaths, always present, always calm. Too calm. The deaths begin to line up, one after another, forming an almost eerie symmetry. No one questions it. Not yet. The nurses and doctors are preoccupied with the task of saving lives, not noticing the strange coincidence that Nia is the constant presence at every death. It's hard to connect the dots. It seems like too much of a leap. After all, nurses are trained to deal with critical cases. Deaths are, unfortunately, part of the job. And Nia is always so composed, so professional, so perfect at her job. But then, the whispers begin. Staff members start to notice the strange pattern. They exchange glances in the break room, mumbling about the timing of each death, the uncanny frequency of Nia's shifts, her ever-present role in each tragedy. But Nia is smart. She is careful. She has learned how to hide in plain sight, how to mask the dark undercurrents of her actions with the smooth surface of normalcy. No one can pin anything on her. She is always just one step ahead. And for Nia, that is a thrill, the real victory. She isn't driven by financial gain. She doesn't seek revenge on anyone. No! Nia's satisfaction comes from something far deeper, far more twisted. Her motivation is power, control. These babies, fragile and powerless, are not victims to her. They are mere pawns in a game she alone controls. Each death is another move on the board, another small victory that feeds her ego, inflates her sense of superiority. She isn't just a nurse. She isn't just performing a job. In her mind, she is the architect of life and death. She is the one who decides who lives, who dies, and who suffers in between. Serial killers, more than anything else, are often driven by a deep-rooted need to control. For Nia, These babies were a means to an end. They were helpless, so easy to dominate, so easy to dispose of when the game was over. And in her twisted mind, each death was a stroke of brilliance, a manifestation of her unrelenting hunger for power. Each death in the hospital isn't a mistake. It's a calculated move. Each one feeds her sense of dominance, fueling her ego and solidifying her belief that she is untouchable. In the quiet of the hospital rooms, as the sounds of life fade into silence, Nia feels a rush, a sense of control that no one else can understand. And as long as she remains hidden in the shadows, her game can continue. With each passing day, Nia's confidence grows. She knows that her power, her ability to orchestrate life and death with such precision, is what makes her unstoppable. And she won't stop until the game is over. But the question remains, how long can she keep this up before the walls start to close in on her? For months, Nia had danced in the shadows, a master of manipulation, her hands clean, at least on the surface. Each death, each victim, had slipped into the quiet corners of the hospital, unnoticed, unchallenged. But now, the cracks begin to form, small and insignificant at first, but in the world of darkness she has built, cracks can become fissures. It starts with an innocuous mistake, a single discrepancy. One of the junior nurses, someone still learning the ropes, notices something odd in the autopsy reports. The cause of death for one of the babies doesn't match the expected outcome. There are signs of suffocation, a deliberate act, not the natural causes that had been claimed. The moment of discovery seems small, a single detail, overlooked by others, but it's enough to set off a chain reaction that will unravel everything Nia has worked so hard to conceal. The junior nurse, confused, doesn't know where to turn. She hesitates, unsure what to do with the knowledge she stumbled upon. But she isn't the only one to notice. As more babies are lost and the deaths start to add up, a sense of unease spreads among the staff. Their suspicions grow, just enough to form a dangerous question. What if these deaths aren't as random as they seem? A meeting is called, an emergency gathering where the hospital staff begins to piece together the unsettling pattern. The whispers get louder, the looks more pointed, and Nia, the ever-calm nurse, finds herself under the scrutinizing gaze of her colleagues. The tension thickens in the air as the pieces of the puzzle start to shift into place. They don't have the answers yet, but they know something isn't right. And yet, Nia remains perfectly composed. Her face, always a mask of professionalism, reveals no cracks. She stands there in the center of the room, her expression unchanged, her voice calm as ever. But inside, something is stirring. There's a tightening in her chest, a growing unease that creeps through the edges of her mind. For the first time in months, she feels the weight of her actions pressing down on her. But she quickly regains control. With a subtle shift in her demeanor, Nia starts to manipulate the room. She's practiced at this, a master of deflection, of turning suspicion away from herself. In an instant, she begins to shift the focus, casting doubt on others in the room, spinning the narrative to her advantage. She sows confusion, gaslighting everyone around her. She plays the role of the victim, the one who is unfairly accused, the one who is simply trying to help. Her colleagues, not fully understanding the depths of her deception, begin to doubt themselves. Maybe they've misinterpreted the evidence. Maybe they're overreacting. Slowly, the suspicion falls away, leaving Nia to stand unscathed at the center of it all. But beneath her calm exterior, something is beginning to change. The perfect mask she has worn for so long starts to crack. The realization that she is being watched, that her secrets are no longer as secure as they once were, begins to gnaw at her. Nia, who had once been so certain, begins to question herself. She starts to wonder, can she keep this up? Is this the end of her game? The thrill of her actions, the rush of control, has always been a constant in her life. But now, it feels different. The paranoia begins to set in. She starts to question every look, every word, every moment. She feels the walls closing in, But the addiction, the need for power, for control, drives her forward. It's not enough to stop. She needs more. Each death, each life taken, feeds her ego, pushes her further into the abyss. The rush of the kill, the control over life and death, is intoxicating. And yet, for the first time, Nia feels the weight of the choices she's made. The internal conflict grows louder. She is on the brink, on the edge of losing everything she's worked for. But she cannot stop. The fear she instills in others, the control she has over their lives, is too powerful. The psychological grip she holds on herself and those around her is far stronger than the crushing weight of the truth she can no longer escape. At this point, the true danger of a serial killer begins to emerge. This is where they start to unravel. The psychological toll of their actions catches up with them. They can no longer ignore the weight of the lives they've taken, the consequences of their choices. But their ego, often inflated by years of getting away with murder, keeps them pushing forward. It becomes a cycle. Fear, control, thrill, and then the overwhelming urge to do it again. Serial killers don't just kill to survive. They kill to feel alive. As the hospital staff holds their breath, unsure of what to believe, Nia stands unscathed for now. But something has changed within her. The game has shifted. She may have manipulated her way out of this moment, but she can't escape the storm brewing inside her. The question remains, how long can she continue to walk this thin line before everything she's built comes crashing down? The game that Nia has played so carefully, so expertly for months, perhaps even years, has reached its breaking point. Every calculated move, every subtle manipulation has been designed to keep the truth hidden. But now, the walls begin to close in. Detective Jane Harris, seasoned and sharp, has been getting closer to the truth, inch by inch. Her investigation, logical and relentless, has started to unravel the tightly knit web of lies Nia has spent so long weaving. Nia knows what's coming, and she can feel the pressure mounting as she's pushed further and further into a corner. The investigation has intensified. Detective Harris has uncovered discrepancies, unraveling clues Nia thought were buried deep. Each thread she pulls leads closer to a confrontation. Harris's resolve strengthens, while Nia's control over her own destiny begins to waver. The game is no longer just about manipulation, it's about survival. Nia knows that if she doesn't act quickly, all will be exposed. The stakes have never been higher, and she's running out of time. As the tension builds, we see Nia, once unshakable, begin to show signs of strain. Her cool demeanor cracks slightly. A fleeting moment of uncertainty betrays her calm exterior. She knows that Harris is dangerously close to the truth, but she refuses to let herself be cornered. She is too clever, too meticulous, to allow herself to be caught now. The moment is inevitable, the confrontation. The stage is set. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit office where Nia and Detective Harris meet, the tension is noticeable. It's not just a meeting of minds. It's a high-stakes battle. The silence between them is charged with unspoken threats. Nia is well aware that this is more than a mere conversation. This is a moment that will determine everything. Her past, her carefully crafted identity, her future. Everything hinges on this moment. Nia stands tall, her voice steady, though there is an almost imperceptible edge to it. She knows how to play this game, how to use words, how to manipulate emotions. She carefully assesses Harris, watching every movement, every breath. Harris, though determined, doesn't have the same experience at playing games of the mind. She's used to dealing with facts, with hard evidence. But Nia isn't offering any. She's too good at what she does. Every word out of her mouth is calculated, every look measured. She's walking a fine line, always a step ahead, always in control. As the investigation intensifies, Nia finds herself in the cold, sterile interrogation room, facing Detective Jane Harris. The walls seem to close in around her, but she's determined to maintain her calm, her composure, at least on the surface. There's a subtle tension in the air, but Nia, with her calculated coolness, doesn't let it show. She's been in control for so long, and she's convinced she can outsmart anyone, even Harris. But Harris has been relentless. Every fact, every detail has been methodically laid out. And now, the time has come for the final confrontation. Detective Harris isn't just questioning Nia. She's testing her, pushing her, pulling the truth from her one calculated piece at a time. The pieces of the puzzle are on the table now, and Harris isn't willing to let Nia manipulate her way out of this. Nia sits across from her, unmoving, as Harris begins to speak. Her voice is calm, but sharp, each word carefully chosen. It's not just the words, it's the weight of what they represent. Nia knows what's coming. She can feel the pressure mounting, but she refuses to give in. She's always been in control, or so she thought. Detective Harris presses on, sliding a report across the table. The cold paper is a stark reminder of Nia's own actions. The autopsy findings, the suffocation, it's all there, right in front of her, undeniable. Harris knows it, and Nia knows it too, but she doesn't flinch. Not yet. She plays her cards with precision, trying to deflect, trying to manipulate the narrative. But Harris doesn't back down. She asks the hard questions, the ones that demand answers. Why? How? Nia tries to dismiss it all as coincidence, but Harris is relentless. The pieces fall into place, dates, times, and her presence at each one of the deaths. It's impossible to ignore now. Harris calls her out on it. Each question cutting through the layers of deceit Nia has built around herself. And then Harris brings out the documents. Nia's own notes, her records, the detailed list of babies she targeted. Harris doesn't just have the facts. She has Nia's own words, written in cold, methodical detail. She lays them out one by one, forcing Nia to face her own actions. The tension in the room thickens as Nia begins to unravel. She can no longer keep up the act. For the first time, cracks begin to show in her demeanor. Her cool, calculated facade starts to slip, just a fraction. But she's not ready to give in. Not yet. Harris presses harder, her questions sharper, more pointed. Nia stammers, then tries to recover, but the weight of the evidence, the crushing truth, starts to close in around her. She's cornered, but she refuses to accept it. Every word out of Harris's mouth feels like a death sentence. She's trapped. There's no escape now. The moments pass in heavy silence. The tension is unbearable. And then, finally, Nia speaks, her voice breaking. The words she's been hiding, the twisted truth she's tried to bury, spill out. She admits it. She acknowledges what she's done, but it's not a moment of remorse. It's a moment of revelation, a reflection of the monster she's become. Harris's calm resolve hasn't just cracked the case. It's cracked Nia. The cold, controlled killer she once was is now exposed, stripped bare by her own confession. The truth, no matter how desperately she tried to bury it, has been dragged into the light. As the final pieces fall into place, as the truth finally rises to the surface, Nia is left with nothing. Her carefully constructed empire of lies, her control over life and death, has crumbled. The predator, once so confident, now stands broken, consumed by the very darkness she once sought to master. In the end, she wasn't just caught by the truth, she was consumed by it. The room falls deathly still after Nia's words hang in the air, an unsettling confession that reverberates through every corner of the room. Detective Harris, unwavering in her stance, doesn't flinch. She's heard the words, but it's the coldness behind them that cuts deeper than anything else. Nia Johnson, once a model nurse, now stands exposed, not as a victim of circumstance, but as the very architect of her own darkness. The facade she spent years building, brick by calculated brick, now lies shattered before her. But the strange part, she isn't sorry. Not really. No. This isn't a moment of regret, of a troubled soul admitting to a lapse in judgment. It's a moment of final clarity. Nia isn't pleading for redemption. She's revealing the truth that's always been buried beneath layers of carefully constructed lies. A truth that, for so long, only she knew. Her confession, raw and chilling, shifts the room's atmosphere. The seasoned investigator, Harris, who has been tracking Nia's every move, feels the weight of this moment. Yet there's a strange satisfaction in the air. The case is solved, but it's more than that. In this moment, the monster who had been lurking in the shadows is no longer concealed behind the white coat of a nurse, no longer hiding behind a calm demeanor and a reassuring smile. She's standing naked in her own guilt and in the undeniable truth of her actions. Nia's admission is her final release. But even as she speaks, there's a hollow, vacant quality to her eyes, as though deep down she knows what she's done, but can't summon the human emotion to feel anything about it. The walls, once meticulously built around her sanity, have crumbled. The game she played, an unspeakable game of power and control over life and death, has finally ended, but she's not the one defeated. In a twisted sense, she has won. Her monster has been set free. But as Nia's confession unfolds, the question lingers. Was she ever truly human? Or was she always this cold, calculating force of nature? Her last words to Harris are chilling, almost robotic, but there's a flicker of something dark and fleeting, that passes through her eyes before the mask is once again in place. She's not a woman broken by the weight of her actions. No, she's the embodiment of a predator who has learned to exist in the shadows, and now, even in the light, she's not ready to surrender. As Harris leaves the room, her expression unreadable, the camera stays on Nia. Her stillness, her silence, almost seems like a warning, a reminder that no matter how much the world tries to understand, there are some things that cannot be explained, not in the way we think. Nia is sentenced, but not for the crime alone, for what she truly was, the personification of a dark, twisted hunger for control. The prison doors close behind her, and the haunting reality of her nature settles into the minds of those who were caught in her web. But it's not over. No, it's never truly over. The cold, sterile hospital room where she once roamed, a silent predator, now sits abandoned. The lifeless machines, the empty beds, symbols of lives lost, yet the room itself is silent, still, as though it's holding its breath, waiting for something. But the emptiness is not just physical, it's psychological, haunting in a way that makes the walls themselves feel like they hold secrets they'll never share. Was Nia Johnson just a broken woman, manipulated by her past? Or was she truly the monster she became? The answer may never come. The silence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. The darkness is still there, lingering in the corners, waiting to resurface. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest content. Join the community and stay tuned for more. See you in the next video.